responsible for being here today. I'm very, very happy that everybody came. Lisa and I met when I had a landscaper who asked if I wanted bees on my property. She said it was ideal. And she put me in touch with Lisa Gledhill, who came to my house. She's from Eastern. And she told me all about it and walked all over my property. And she found the ideal spot and she told me why it was the ideal spot. It was really, really fascinating. And all it does is get more fascinating as time goes on. Because I don't have to do anything unless I want to. Lisa comes over once, twice a week. She moves frames around, lots of good stuff like that. And I can go out and put a bee suit on and join her. Or I can stay in the house and say, oh, she did good care of her. So I volunteered in this program up in Truro, COA, and I thought you'd see something that you folks would enjoy. Welcome, Lisa Gledhill.
So I'm so happy to be here. If you can give me just one moment, we've had a couple people show up. So if I can just have your assistant. And then I'll get started. So anybody who's right here, Debbie.
Yes.
May I ask if everybody has a couple of things in front of them? It will be what is in Debbie's hand, and I have one more thing to get. Except for those, for any of the last people that came through, and then we will start. Everybody,
Yes, you may.
Okay. So before we get going, everybody should have a small jar of honey.
Yes.
Which is the tasting of Summer Bliss 2024. Everybody should have a raffle ticket.
Yeah.
Your numbers are in the jar. Everybody should have a beautiful information packet, a napkin, and a jar with some wooden tasting sticks. Does everyone have that, or does anyone need that? You need 2 setups over there. Here. So thank you, Barney, for the introduction. Sorry for the little runabout here, but I am so grateful to see this room filled with people that are so excited to hear about honeybees. So again, my name is Lisa Gledhill and my service is Outer Cape Honeybees. And I am a honeybee enthusiast. I was introduced to beekeeping about 13 years ago from a dear friend and a mutual friend, Laura Kelly. And many of you know little Laura Kelly of Littlefield Landscape in our town is a pretty big mighty mouth on stopping end stars and stopping spraying and doing all she can for the environment. Well, she used to be a beekeeper and I was so fascinated by her bees. And now it's become my life journey to spend my time every day spending. What I'm going to do is just go over an overview about honeybees, talk to you about how they come up when we start a colony, the equipment, how we work it through the season, so that we can then eventually get to the beautiful golden elixir of the honey that is in front of you. Then we're going to have the opportunity on every table are tasting jars. And there is a purple card, and the purple card identifies where all the honey is from, and each jar is numbered. So we'll be able to do tastings, 1 stick per tasting. I'll go through that and we're going to start that. And we're going to do a little raffle and a Q&A, and I'll go over all the information I have on the table. My website is Outer Cape Honeybees. And what I do is I set up and manage host hives on Cape Cod from the dunes of Provincetown through the shoals of Chatham. And I manage them year round, and I invite my hosts to come in and learn about honeybees should they choose and be part of the amazing experience. So on Cape Cod, we have lighthouse keepers, those are the keepers of the light. We have innkeepers, the keepers of the guests. And we and our hosts are considered the keepers of the flight. So together we are doing our part to save these vitally important creatures in our universe and in our little tiny space of this sandbar called Cape Cod. Again, thank you so much for having me. And my partner Debbie is going to be assisting me in just a moment and carrying around the observation hive, which we will set into the center of each table. And you will have the opportunity to identify the worker bees, the nurse bees, the larvae, the pupa, the birthing babies.
No drones?
The drones have now migrated out of the hive. The cold weather has come and they have now left. You may find one or two in the hive, but predominantly they are now gone. So this is a great observation hive. I'm going to give everybody the opportunity.
Where do
So-
they go?
So I'll answer that right now,
Okay,
and then we'll get
sorry.
back on page. Where did they go? The sad reality is the bees now leave the hive and go to their demise. The drones serve one purpose. It is solely to mate the queen. Once they have mated the queen, they perish. But those that did not mate with the queen sit like couch potatoes in the hive and eat up all the stores. So these worker bees who work diligently to survive and keep the queen alive and fed, we don't clean, they don't gather food, they don't protect the hive, they serve no purpose, so they throw them all out in the first cool nights of the end of August and September. So there's where the bees go.
So how do they know which ones get which job?
Oh, it's another fascinating part of the bees, so I'll go over the whole point of every bee's job in the hive. So how many people here have been or are currently a beekeeper? Are you a beekeeper presently? From
Yes.
Tallinn, Connecticut,
Here on.
here on the Cape?
East End.
And how many beehives do you have?
I have one, I lost one, I still have one.
Wonderful, I'm glad to hear that. And how about yourself?
I have one hive, but it died and I took a,
Or in the transition?
yeah,
Anyone else, a beekeeper? Okay, well then I am super pleased to have two special people, Bonnie, who just introduced us. And Bonnie hired Outer Cape Honeybees to establish host hives on her property. So we have two hives that are affectionately named after her granddaughters. We have Sky and Naomi. So this is your first year with your bee.
It's exciting, it's new. Lisa just brings joy and enthusiasm and it's just a nice new thing in my life at this age.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And then one of the services of Outer Cape Honeybees is to handle the swarm retrievals that happen. How many people in the room have had a swarm either in a tree or in a building? Did you have it in your house, in a building, in a house? Yes,
You were in the wall.
there was a wall.
Yeah.
So that is something that my service does. We go in and on some cases, I'm cutting the roof off of a house, pulling and extracting the bees out. And it's a big process, and in some of these extractions, there can be 80,000 bees in a colony. And then the contractors I work with, we rebuild the building. Now, I get great joy out of honeybees. So I always find it fun to invite the property owner, say, hey, how'd you like to get in a suit for the day and join me in the extraction? So if I was showing up at your house to cut your wall open and pull out 10, 20, 30, 100,000 bees, would you want to get in a suit and join me?
Hell yeah.
So that was the answer I got from Meredith, the property owner in Shadow, who when I offered her the opportunity to get in a bee suit and join me off my cuff, she said,
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. And this amazing lady had never been near bees, didn't know anything about honeybees, and I put her in a suit and handed her a power tool. And she
Have at it.
opened that wall and started vacuuming out the bees.
Aw.
Meredith, did you have a good time?
I had the best time. That's why I'm here right now. I brought my friends. I said, you gotta meet Lisa.
So it's been a great way for me to meet my community and make a positive impact in our community and in our environment. So why is the fascination about honeybees? So there's over 30,000 species of pollinating bees. Many of them are solitary bees. Many of them live in the ground. Some of them are purple, or orange, or electric green, or black. Some of them are so minuscule, you think that they're a mosquito. But there is only one species, the honeybee, that creates the beautiful golden elixir of honey for human consumption. So that is my greatest fascination of honeybees. Honeybees are responsible for every third bite of food we eat. And people say, well, I don't eat honey, so I don't see a need for honeybees. Well, let's talk about that. If you enjoy a morning cup of coffee, that's by honeybee. If you enjoy Red Barn pizza for dinner at night, whether it's the tomato sauce or the grain that feeds the cow to make the cheese or the flour that makes the crust, that is all part of a pollinator's work for honeybee. Or maybe you're enjoying chocolate at the end of your night. Again, that's all due to a honeybee. So I invite you to really think the critical importance of every third bite of food you eat is directly related to the welfare and survival of a honeybee. So honeybees, in my service, we start off with bringing a colony to a home, and our desire is to place them into a new box and have them survive. I'm going to do a little show and tell and talk with queens in my apiary this year that are Cape Cod queens. But we have to wait until July or June, July, and August to create and birth these queens. So we start our colonies arriving the end of March and April. Many of us remember what April looked like. It was about 38 degrees. My poor babies started arriving in these wooden crates. They come up from Georgia because the orders are placed by January for the new bees. So they're birthing the bees and creating the colonies, and they've got to get out of Georgia. So they're coming on trucks up to New England. They arrive in this box. They will have a can filled with the sugar water and 3 pounds of bees, which is roughly 8,000 to 10,000 bees. And inside this box will be this little cage. Now, the queen did not birth any of these male or females, which are drone are males or worker bee females. So they haven't spent any time together. So in the shipment from Georgia for a couple of days, they're starting to get familiarized with each other, and the queen's pheromones start to fill the box with a scent that they recognize. And then what we do is we take this and we gently place it into a bottom deep within frame and allow the bees to come out naturally. And I attach this queen cage with elastic bands onto a frame. And on the end, we'll have a sugar cube. And she will be in this little cage with about 4 to 6 worker bees. And their job is to feed her. And in 3 to 4 days, they're going to chew their way of that sugar cube. And now the queen will walk out of her cage, immediately start laying. So the queen arrives mated. That's the plan. Sometimes it happens and we get a couple of queens in the box that are virgin queens, but a true mated queen will have flown into her apiary one time, may take one day, may take a to 3 days, and she will mate with as many drones as possible, between 1 and 50. She will hold all the sperm of that time in her body. The drones, when they mate, they will demise, fall from the sky. The queen will then go back into her home, and in this case, they put her in the cage. Or if she was at my property in my apiary, she'll fly back into her box. And then she will start laying. She will start to lay in that April timeframe, 100, 200 eggs a day. You think, come July and August, and at the end of July, when it's hot summer and she's cranking, she's popping anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 babies a day.
Oh, my God.
A day. And she will lay an egg in all hexagon cells. They are the perfect size. She will go in with her, turn around, lay an egg, walk to the next, turn around, lay an egg. Now that egg is going to turn into a larvae in 3 days. They will begin to feed that egg, every single egg she lays. The worker bees or the royal jelly, 100% of them will get a royal jelly. It's a white, milky, creamy solution. You can hear that. Then they will determine if they need a new queen. She will only receive royal jelly, or if they're going to create a female or a drone. And then they will start feeding the females and the males a pollen and nectar mix. And then at about day 6, that pupa,
Something flew out.
there's just, one's making its little way, but there's really, they can't, the 99% can't get out of it. So they will then spin into a cocoon, they will seal that hexagon little cell with wax.
Excuse me, do you have tape?
Do I have tape?
Do you have any tape that you need to put somewhere?
No, I
Because
think
most of them-
it's part of nature. They could have been on the outside, but you can check in that box if you're comfortable. So, they will seal that baby with a little wax. And then between the days of 12, 16, 19, those babies will birth out, depending on whether they are a female or a male or a new queen. The interesting thing is when they birth, they are a fully developed bee. From the moment they walk out of that cell, their entire nervous system is in place. All their organs are built in place. They birth, they have 5 eyes. Each one will have an important job from the moment they are born. The first job is to turn around and become, they will walk around. Bee. Cleaning their house. And they will clean that cell and get it ready for the queen to lay a new egg. And then after a certain number of days, because keep in mind that honeybee will only live approximately 45 days. So their life cycle is very quick. So for the first week or so, they're that little worker bee, right? In the hive doing some cleaning. And then they will become a nurse bee, which means they are responsible for accepting the nectar coming in from the foragers, turning it then into a nectar to feed the next babies that are getting ready to be capped. And then from there, they will transition in their final weeks of life into a forager bee. And that is when they will leave the hive and they will go and visit all the blossoms that we can give them in this environment and start pollinating our vegetables, our fruits, our flowers, and bringing in that sweet nectar back to the hive. So honeybees have 2 stomachs. One of their stomachs is simply to hold the nectar that they're bringing in. it mixes with enzymes in their body, and then they transfer it by their mouth to the next bee to receive it. That bee brings it in the hive and places it inside the comb. They then have to evaporate out that moisture because honey sits at about 80% nectar, 20% water. But they have to reduce that moisture so that they can then seal it with wax. And we've all heard that King Tut's tomb, they found honey and it is still sealed in wax. So I find that just fascinating. So how far do these bees travel? In a normal environment, such as your friend in Syracuse, they're traveling 3 to 5 miles in a happy environment. In our environment on Cape Cod, where we're surrounded by so much water, I am finding that normally my bees are only traveling at most 1 mile from their home because they've got water on both sides. So it's vitally important that we give them a healthy environment to live their life in. Because everything that they go out and forage for, they in essence are bringing back into the house. So if they're coming back in with toxins or pesticides or sprays that were used, they're gonna kill their queen. So they're gonna try and not allow them back in the front door. But if all the foragers are then in contact with a poison of some sort, and the guard bees at the door won't let them in, well, the worker bees inside are not at the age yet to become a forager bee. They can't leave the hive, and that puts us into that spin cycle of sick hive environments. So I'm really going to talk with all of us about the importance of honeybees and what we can do to really lessen the stress in our environment so that we can keep them in a healthy way moving forward. So what does anybody know on an average flight out of a hive, how many blossoms a honeybee will visit in one visit out of the hive?
5 to 800.
Oh, 5 to 800. Keep going. The average flight out of the hive, they are out. They have to return to the hive within every 15 minutes or so when their saddlebags are full and their stomachs are full of nectar. So they're doing a pretty quick flight in and out. And they visit upwards of 5,000 blossoms in those 15 minutes. And they are flying like the wind, right? So how much are they flying like the wind? We're hearing them right now. The average honeybee flaps her wing 11,200 times a minute. So if we all listen very quietly, we can. So their job is to keep that queen at 95 degrees right now. Whether it is 110 degrees out or minus 40. They've got to keep her in that optimum of 95. So yes, as it fluctuates 92, 93, but 95. If they don't, she will die. So by flapping their wings, that is what they're producing. That heat to warm her or that exhaust to cool her. So I find this a fascinating fact. 1 ounce of honey is enough fuel for a honeybee to fly the equivalent of around the world. And in their lifetime, 1 honeybee is said to have flown that flight around the world in 45 days, covered that much distance, even if it is so close in proximity, surrounded by our ocean and bay. That I find to be a really fascinating fact. So I would be happy to, at this moment, answer any question you have before I move forward. I don't want to overwhelm you with trivia.
So you said there's only 1 honeybee species, right? So that's worldwide. It's the same honeybee in other countries.
So there will be a variation of the honeybee, There are Russian bees and African bees and Cornelian bees, Italian bees, but they are all considered under the label of a honeybee. And they are the only species that will produce honey. All the other pollinators are solitary bees. The interesting thing about solitary bees is they are just that, solitary. They don't live in a colony together. A solitary bee, for example, I did an art project with the kids at the Unitarian Church in Brewster, and we made little solitary bee houses. And all of you can do this. It simply is a can stuffed with different sizes of bamboo. So that solitary queen will go in, produce her nectar and her pollen, and lay an egg, followed by nectar. She will lay no more than maybe 300 eggs at the most, and she will walk away. She does not have attendees, she does not have worker bees, nurse bees, that's it. She puts them in their existence and then she leaves, and those bees will then birth out. If she has done this in August, you'll see them next spring in our environment. They have everything they need to survive on their own. They eat their way literally out of their capped honey and nectar and move to the next pollen and nectar, and then all those bees come out, and then they go out, individual solitary bee, do their pollination and create their own house. They don't work in a colony. It's only the honeybees that work in a colony. So if I start out with a 3-pound box of bees, roughly 8 to 10,000. How many bees do you think we could have by the end of August? It'll power this big. The average is roughly 80 to 100,000 honeybees. So let's talk about the equipment and what that looks like. This right here is considered, I call it the bee condo. So this is their house. They arrive as a blank piece of plastic that I then render with wax. All it is, one piece of plastic. I will have 10 in this box. She will start laying 500 and 200, 300 in April when it was 30 degrees. Pick it up. You're hoping in a couple of weeks that the queen has laid 3 frames. We're doing good. And then when I'm pulling these in July, one frame filled on both sides with unbirthed babies. Do you know how many bees that is? One frame. 7,000 bees. She lays 1,200 to 2,500 a day. They only live 45 days. They're birthing out every 12 to 19 days. It's a crazy busy life, right? And it all starts with this frame. So I wax them with beeswax, and that helps the bees to accept the frames and start drawing out their wax. You can see here, you can see the black of the foundation, and then you can see what they drew out on top. Now we have 2 honey flows. First honey flow happens in the spring, and we are blessed with our locusts, which is a big pull here on Cape Cod. And the second flow happens in the fall. So depending on the age of the hive will determine whether you can capture a spring or a fall, or in some cases, neither, because it's a new colony. I like to manage my hives in what's called micro harvesting, pulling a little bit off so that our whole. We just did a harvest party for Bonnie and Dom and Sky and Naomi. And did you have fun?
Oh, it was a blast. It really was fun.
And we filled a whole bunch of honey jars and it was great. So it starts with this, and we move into the nectar flow season, and we start adding on these boxes. And these boxes are what we refer to as either a medium condo to give them a second story of their house, Some beekeepers use 2 deeps. I find that way too much room on Cape Cod. We have a lot of humidity in the winter, we fluctuate in time, it's just way too much real estate for them to keep warm. So I utilize my system, my condos will be 1 deep and 1 medium. And then we start placing on our honey supers. In a good strong nectar flow, I like to give them a front landing board and a quick little entrance to start storing their honey. That helps these bees from having to go through the front door, come up through 10 frames, up through another 10 frames, and then deposit their honey in. Chances are she's already laying in 8 of those frames in the first box, 8 of those frames in the second box. The other 2 frames are jam-packed with food that they start filling from the outside in for them. So the top boxes on plastic. And they start drawing it out to the perfect dimension of that hexagon shape. So it starts here. And I'm going to just, so that you can see the weight of what that is, you're welcome to pass that around. And then the joys of the season are when that frame turns into this. This is, and you felt the weight of that frame. How do you like to feel the weight of that frame? So what we do is we systematically take off the frames as we can use for our consumption, leaving the bees enough to get them through their season. And then I bring them to my honey house and we have the extraction equipment and we start carving off the wax and spitting out the honey and bringing it into jars. The neat part is this becomes the liquid gold after the honey. This is real gold because this frame has already been drawn out with the bees, which means next year we're that much farther ahead of the game that I can put this in the hive and they will immediately be able to start filling it with nectar or filling it with babies. They'll do the quick repairs of the wax. So this is what a frame feels like after I've extracted it. You can pass those around. It's kind of fun.
Where's the wax coming from?
So the wax is created, great question. The wax is created from the bees. They have a gland that produces on their bottom abdomen. They literally start it when the nectar flow is right, or they're being fed sugar water. When the nectar flow is right, and they literally secreting actual wax. You can see it on the undersides of their bodies. And they take that wax and they build the comb. Now, in a natural environment that they do not have a frame to work on, this is what the natural wax looks like. I pulled this out of a building. And you can see how even without having a wax foundation to start with, they know how to build a hexagon shape. So I'll start that at this table and you can pass that around and you can smell it. It smells fantastic. And it's that wax that creates the candles, right? So I'm wondering if everybody online is still having a great time and we have people, let's give a wave out to anybody if they're with us on the backside. Thanks for joining us in the webinar. So that is the wax that
honey.
Yes.
And you said you keep that and put it back in the hive the
Yes.
following spring?
yes.
Does it have to go in the same hive?
It does not need to go in the same hive because they are honey supers. However, we do try to keep their condo in the exact order that they have built in the hive. But as a beekeeper, it's my job to make sure that the colonies are surviving and doing well. So I have the ability, if I have 2 hives next to each other, and let's say one hive is a little sluggish in population, I can actually go to my neighbor hive and pull a frame and put it right into this hive and they will accept that. I love to share this part. What's really amazing is there are instances where you have lost your queen. She has died. She didn't mate properly. She's only laying drones. Or she's an old queen and she stops laying. Or you want to create a new hive. I can take a frame that they have just recently laid in. And those eggs are 1 to 3 days old. And I can pick up that frame and place it in a box. And those worker bees will create a new queen out of a brand new laid egg. And that is fascinating work of the creation of the honeybees. Yes?
Is it a difference in the food that they give the babies that makes the drone versus make?
Apply that determines if it is a worker bee or drone or a queen. A queen will only receive 100% royal jellies. All the babies will receive royal jelly for a few days, and then the worker bees and drones will only receive. The worker bees and drones will then switch over to only receiving pollen and nectar. But what determines a male or a female, which is a great question.
Genetically different,
They are very different, male and female.
but genetically they're different.
They're male and female. Here's the good part. A male is called a drone, and it is an unfertilized egg. Remember, she goes out on her flight, mates with as many as she can, stores all of her sperm in her body, and then systematically produces a fertilized egg or an unfertilized egg. And it is the unfertilized egg that becomes a drone, and it is a fertilized egg that will become a female, which starts as a nurse bee, becomes a worker bee, and finishes her cycle as a forager bee. That worker bee does not become a queen. That drone does not become a queen. There are times a worker bee can start laying eggs because they got eggs, but they're not fertilized. And in that case, you have a whole population of drones because nobody is mated and the hive isn't going to survive. So that's a really interesting scenario.
Are they the only creatures that can create a new life without a fertilized egg?
I don't know.
I mean, it just biologically, it usually takes
No, I
have a live creature. Yeah.
I don't know that. And the survival that has been around 45,000 years and change is that they are meant to survive. Creating a new queen, adjusting their population in their hive to what they need. Now, mostly, the worker bees will draw out a cell along the bottom that is a little larger, just a little bit bigger in the hexagon. And that tells the queen they want the male in that cell. It's a little bigger. And they're a little fatter when they cap them. The drones are usually concentrated on a frame along the bottom, which is where we want them, or in a colony. To show you that. And the females are scattered. You want them in this perfect football scenario where they take a frame and on the outside 4 corners, they fill that and cap it with all the nectar. And then in the center, as they bring it in, they fill that with all of the pollen, which is their carbohydrate. And then in the center of the football, that's where she's laying the babies. So we want every frame to look in that perfect scenario. And that frame is presented when I was in Truro. I could show you those gorgeous frames in June, July, and August. They were incredible. Now that we're in September, the frames start to look a little different. And why is that? Because she slows up on laying her summer babies. Because they only live 45 days. If she slows up on laying because it's too cold for her to have foragers go out, how are they going to survive? The interesting part of the honeybee species is she switches when the nights get cool in August in our environment. She switches to start laying a different genetic bee, and that is called a winter bee. And they are a lot slower. And instead of traveling at the speed of light, in their 45 days, they wrap the globe. These bees live upwards of 4 to 6 months. And their whole job is to just keep her warm and fed out of the stores that they have in the house. And then they have to drag out the dead ones that are happening because it's winter. And on those warm days in December, they'll start flying out the front door. They might only go 2 feet from the front door, but they have to. But they're much slower. And then in February, when that's outside without our wool, and we go, oh God, I made it through another Cape Cod summer. The queen is saying the same thing. And the queen starts up laying again. Only she's now laying her spring babies, which are the same genetic makeup as the summer babies. So those babies are really only gonna last 45 days. So when she starts in February and it is winter blazing cold here through Memorial Day, struggle on those bees, agree? But that is really the cycle of this hive. And we go through our ebb and flows on the strength and population on the hive, ebbs and flows. In our strength in the food stores, because let's say we have an early spring, but there's nothing in bloom. Well, they're eating all. Have to start feeding them because they would not have stored enough to make it through. Or let's say we have a summer like we just came out of, which was an incredible dearth. It was so blazing hot, it just dried up all the nectar they could have found. We were rainy in June, which did amazing jobs for the pear trees, but it sure didn't benefit our beach plums or apples this year. So some things did very well in environment and others didn't do so well. So as a beekeeper, it's important for me to feed and nourish and nurture these bees in care. So I start feeding them in the spring a 1-to-1 sugar ratio. So it's real simple. 4 pounds of sugar, 1 gallon of water. But in the fall, that might switch to 8 pounds of sugar to 1 gallon of water. Debbie is my master chemist in calculation in the kitchen of making the honey syrup. Debbie, what is the ratio we're feeding our bees at this moment?
It's 2-1, so that's 16 pounds to 1 gallon of water.
16 pounds of.
Pounds of 4 pounds, basically.
4 pounds.
Where do you give the sugar?
Yes.
How do you put them in?
So I'll share that. So we created it into a syrup. So that's 4-pound bags of sugar per hive every 5 to 7 days.
Oh boy, that's a lot of sugar.
That's a lot. We've got to make sure they have 60 pounds in that hive to go to winter. And I only micro harvest a little bit off of the honey so that we can enjoy the process, but they've got to have food. So they start to slow up now. I start feeding them this year because of our terrifying drought. I started feeding in August so that I'm in a phenomenally beautiful place in September. And many of my beekeeper friends were like, why are you feeding the bees? It's gorgeous. Because look at what happened overnight on Cape Cod. We went from tank tops and bathing suits to wool shirts overnight in rain. So I feed them on early and now they are really bedded down beautifully well. And now my cycle of what they need to have in their 10 days, they go through that gallon. And very quickly, they won't be needing to take it anymore because they will have enough stores for winter storage. So it's very quickly going to become too cold at night for me to be giving them liquid. And how do I feed them? I have a white bucket. There's several ways. I have one way is a top feeder. I have a white bucket, which has a lid and it has a screen hole. And I place it on 2 pieces of stick on an inner cover on the top of the hive. So if you were to envision that this hive, the honey supers have come off. And this is the inner cover, and it's placed on top of the deep or the medium of their condo. It has an air vent hole and a hole in the center. Some beekeepers work with solids and they don't have the hole. I like the hole on Cape Cod because it's so, our humidity is crazy here, right? So in the winter, I reverse the lid. It has just a little bit more depth and it allows me to put a pollen patty on, which is good, strong carbohydrates for her. They have to have pollen to produce. Brood are the eggs. So I feed them some pollen, it stays under the lid. I put 2 strips of wood here and I put the bucket on top. The girls come up and drink their nectar. Now, other times of the year, I have what's called a frame feeder. And it is a black trough that holds a gallon or 2 gallons. And I remove in the deep and I fill it there. Others, they have a frame feeder that is the size of this honey super. And it's a trough on both sides, holds about 2 to 3 gallons. And they come up through the center of that, walk on a little screen and suck up the honey. Sometimes that's a nice way to do it in the first push of the fall, so that we can really gorge them with sugar water. I'm not a big advocate of that because I find that a lot of the bees drown and I'm not really liking that. So I put my COVID wine corks. We all have those from COVID. We drank way too much wine. I saved all the corks. So in my feeders, they have these little tubes that they walk down to drink out of. Well, I give them a little float. They'll forever be called a COVID cork. So I give them a cork, eat and fly out. So that is how we feed them. And then we get to extreme winter, which we're coming up on. So what we will be doing is creating what is called a candy board. And that candy board is about 2 to 3 inches in height, the diameter of the box. On the bottom will have a heart. Think of it as thick frosting. It's just made of sugar. Everything in bees is sugar, 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 sugar. And it's about 10 pounds of sugar. I place that on top of the hive. Then on top of that, I put on what's called a quilt box. Quilt box is about 4 to 6 inches in height. There's hardwood cloth on the bottom so the bees can't get up in. And I for wicking, burlap, wood chips, and what I place that on top. What that does is takes all that perspiration, just like when we wear wool and we sleep under wool, Navy, they all wear wool. It's the warmest you can be. it absorbs all that moisture, it wicks it away from them and keeps lose their hives for 2 reasons, 3 reasons. Either they haven't been fed enough to make it through, or they have a very bad mite load, which is a bug, a parasite that harms and kills our bees. It's one of the biggest demises of our honeybees. Or 3, they freeze to death. And how do they freeze to death on Cape Cod? Is all that moisture, because she's at 95 degrees. So all that perspiration, and then the outside at night gets down to 28. You have a way to wick that excess moisture out, and it keeps them nice and warm. We have a much better chance of survival through the winter. So I've given you an overview of how our bees arrive on Cape Cod, the life cycle of a bee in a hive to produce the beauty of the nectar flow. A good strong hive will produce anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds of honey. That's a good strong hive, not a first-year hive. But I can tell you, I had my hives last year, which was an amazing season. I had 2 hives in Truro. First year, pulled 100 pounds off of 2 hives. They wintered over beautifully. This year they hit a dearth, and this year they pulled 20 pounds. Night and day. Had a couple more hives up the way. 2 hives did phenomenally well. They ended up 2 hives in a season, had 6 honey supers. 3 are bedded down for the girls. Pull the other 3 for the host and I. So it's amazing. Most hives this year did on average 20 pounds is what 10 to 20 we were sniping in a comfortable place. Did you find that to be your case with your hives?
Yeah.
And that was a comfortable pull. But last year, how did you do?
Well, I lost a hive last year.
Oh, I'm sorry. So it's all cyclical, right?
You know, I lost 2 this year. I still have 1.
I'm sorry. I will definitely work with you on that. I'm blessed to say I bedded down last year 13 hives for the season. 11 came out of winter and are going strong.
Yes.
This year, the figure is to put 40 into bed down for winter and to have 38 come out of winter. So I work very hard for that survival rate and then knowing that we can start right back over again. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about, the ailments of bees. So we all love dogs and cats. What do dogs and cats get? Fleas, worms, right? Pretty common. We treat it. So I'm of the school of thought that if I'm responsible for these honeybees that are in an unnatural environment, because it's a box and not a tree, I have to do my job to keep them healthy and well, which means I treat for conditions that are going to injure my bees. And that the biggest one are mites. Just like parasites on a dog, bees get them too. And they are a mite that attaches. They're just like a tick. They're a blood-sucking creature that hurts the bees. But I treat them with an oxalic acid vape, which is the same makeup. It's non-toxic. It is totally safe. It's safe for honey supers. It's safe for us. And it is the natural element that is found in rhubarb leaves. So if you think about cutting your rhubarb leaves and putting them on top of your beehive, that can kind of help with the mite control there. I also treat for wax moths because this is a kingdom floating around. Think of it as a big giant wool sweater, right? The wax, the moths want to come. So if you have a really strong bee population, the other big issue that we have are hive beetles. And hive beetles are a little bug that gets in the hive. They walk around like a beetle and they just slime up these frames, and they do a terrible job. So I treat and get out. Doesn't bother the honeybees at all. So I'm pretty much, I'm not a purist of a beekeeper. I'm a responsible beekeeper that does mite management and mitigation and manage my bees in applications that are healthy and safe and non-toxic. One of the big problems that we're having here on Cape Cod, we're gonna talk about it. Over here is the petition that Laura Kelly designed for the reduction of pesticide use. We all have that. It has passed through many, many towns on Cape Cod, the reduction of pesticides. But that's on a big scale level that we're trying to get the towns to literally stop this. But on a personal front, many properties are spraying for mosquitoes. And I understand there's a problem with mosquitoes. But it's okay to put the application on your body. But if you understand that every third bite of food you eat is directly related to a honeybee, I get it if you're not interested in honeybees, but you know what it's injuring? Our monarch butterflies, which will only lay a milkweed. So there's a lot of mosquito spray companies that are telling you it's safe, it's organic, it's non-toxic, it's fine. You know what else is safe and organic? Or organic? Crude oil coming out of the ground. It's organic, but you know, how many people love bathing their children, get out of the bath time, cover them with baby powder, life is good, and now years later, we're hearing how it is causing terrifying cancer and directly related to baby powder. So to know better is to do better. It's the application being a fraud is too high of a concentration, and it is killing the bees that live on the ground to 3 feet. It's injuring the honeybees because when the foragers come back to the hive, the guard bees won't let them in. It is crippling the queens who need to birth and go out on a maiden flight. And she gets into a spray, a fog, and she doesn't mate properly and it demises the hive. So I'm asking people to think about, if you're gonna mosquito spray, maybe consider July and August when it is the danger, you know, when the mosquitoes are really bad, but doing it at the very end of the day when all the foragers are back in the hive. But the morning dew, they come out to drink the water. So if they're spraying the strawberry blossoms, which you're then gonna rely on your honeybees to pollinate, and the honeybee is there to drink the morning dew, you're causing a problem. So if we just think about it in that way, I know that I know that people are gonna spray for mosquitoes. It's how can we work in a cycle that keeps it healthy and keeps things going so that every generation are able to eat healthy, organic food, and we don't grow up on frankenfood, because Monsanto's is already figured out how to create a robo bee to do the pollinating. Well, a robo bee is not what we want in our environment. So it's just a thought. It's just a thought. We're having a problem with our birds not having enough of a food source because there's so many of the smaller insects that are dying. It's also causing havoc in the microbials of our soil because we want those creatures that are in the soil to eat the dirt, to get rid of the bad stuff that's in our soil. So there's a lot of just do your research and understanding on how we can maybe shift the mosquito spraying into a better, safer way so that we can all work in our environment and live well. Because I get it, it's uncomfortable, we all want it, but maybe we could figure something out. I don't know. I know that I work with some companies that are quite lovely, quite responsible, and they too have said, we know it's the application that's causing the problem. Because it's just such a high concentration. So that's just food for the honeybees and the solitary bees and helping everyone. So what I'd love to do now with respect to time, because I've really given you a great overview. I hope I've shared a good wealth of knowledge and the love of honeybees. I really would like at this time to have Devin and I carry the observation hive around to each table so that you can see the bees up one. I also would like at this time the opportunity to share the honey harvest tasting party right here on your table. You will find, Linda, may I borrow yours?
Sure.
Everybody has a little napkin to discard your use. Gonna say that this like one, it's one stick per dip, no double lick stick. Got it?
Got it.
So everybody has a tasting stick. Every table has a card. It gives you a number. The honey jar has a number on it. It will represent. I have honey from around the world. When people travel, they bring me gifts back. I have honey from Greece, Debbie, and I have honey from Dominican Republic. We've got a lot of samplings from Greece. We also have Maine and Virginia and North Carolina. We also have Outer Cape honeybees, Summer Bliss, honeybees cranberry bogs. Cranberry bog is a monocrop. The hives are on the bog and it only pulls the cranberry blossom for a couple of short weeks. Autumn nights comes in the autumn harvest. It's when you have the chrysanthemums and the mint and the asters. Summer bliss is the joy of our pear, peach, apple, locust blossoms. It's super light and floral. The names will tell you what they are. Pumpkin is just that, straight out of the pumpkin patch. Buckwheat. Debbie and I will be moving the trays around to every table so that everybody gets to taste. And then we will have a raffle. I would also like, Linda, may I please borrow your handout? I have shared with everybody. The joys of honeybees are also the beauty of our environment, right? So it's all about what can I plant in my yard that feeds the honeybees? Does anybody know the number one crop, agricultural crop in the United States that does not feed a honeybee? Corn. Number one agricultural crop does not feed the honeybees, nor serves no purpose to feed us. Number one crop.
Corn.
Anyone else?
Corn.
Anyone else? It is grass. It is your lawn. So what I encourage you, I have shared some great printouts. The first are some wonderful listings of plants that you can put in your garden. On the bottom here, what we can do to attract honeybees to our garden is number 7. Stop the monocrop lawns. They serve no purpose. What does serve a purpose are our dandelions. They're the first food source for honeybees in the spring. Our clover, phenomenal food source for honeybees. Getting away from monocrops and going with diversity in our gardens and in our lawns is going to help all of our pollinators. So I've given you some fabulous facts on this back page. And I think everybody will have great joy out of this. One of which I've shared many of them in my presentation. But do you know that a honeybee will only produce 1/12,
That one's
that's
greasy.
1,12, 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her entire life. So as you understand that that's about 1/12 of that teaspoon, and it took a honeybee her whole life to give you that tasting. So I encourage you to read that. I've shared with you great ways to bring bees to your garden and home. Also, the importance of what honeybees can do for your fruits and vegetables in our property, on our apiary. We have olives. Those are the fruits. But the vegetables, we have a prolific vegetable garden, and some years are good and some years are hard. But on the years that are good, the tomatoes and the cucumbers and the squash blossoms and the peppers are in abundance because of the honeybees. I've also shared with you on this green sheet of paper information about hosting the honeybee hives. That is my company, that is my mission, and that is my service. I offer that service to clients here from the Dunes of Provincetown, through the Shoals of Chatham and Harwich. I have hives at Bonnie's home. I'd be happy to talk with anybody about this. Right now, we're doing all of our pre-registration for 2025 because we are ordering the bees come January. All contracts are in place. With you about that, either Japan, if you have any interest, or you'd like to host a harvest party for you and your friends in your home, or you'd like to come to a workshop, or you want information about bees, or you need mentorship, anything that I can be of service to you, please write your contact information and I will be reaching out. And you also have my number. Is this wonderful brochure of the Cape Cod Pollinator Garden. So I hope that you've enjoyed this part of the lecture, and now I'm going to bring it right up to your tables and start walking around, Debbie and I, with the beehives. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
This is our money, this is our gift to you, and every one of you. There's an amazing presentation. I have to go to my.
So this is Cape Cod.
If you eat honey within the 1 mile radius,
Yes.
if you have allergies.
You gotta take this home and. Yeah.
Wow.
That's why I was here, right?
Yes, and I'm gonna hand out, yeah.
You need to talk to
No, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's all of them. We're gonna place all 14. Here we go.
What number is it?
Good show, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they did. So it's for the Charles South. The last license. What it takes. What's, what do you got, number 3? So,
on the outside, it's got.
You don't have to read this out.
And then that's.
Lisa?
It's right up there, next to her. Oh, style. I did my.
number 3.
Oh, no, that's.
Let me know the bag.
It's like going fast. This one is the one, this one is the one. Here's the pumpkin.
No.
Oh my gosh. Oh, here you go. This is avocado. Number 5.
One of Lisa's favorites.
Wow. That's also, yeah. Very, very. Oh, yeah, yeah. Everybody talks about. Used to have to get this out. Yeah.
It's not any bad. This is our blessings.